Out of the ashes of World War II and against the backdrop of the Cold War, NATO was born. On April 4, 1949, the North Atlantic Treaty was signed in Washington, D.C. It was a military pact, but also an alliance of shared values to counter the threat posed by the Soviet Union.
If there is anything inevitable in the future, it is the will of the people of the world for freedom and for peace.
Over the years, NATO has weathered countless storms, both within the alliance, like France's military withdrawal in 1959, and externally, like the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 or the Euro Missile Crisis of 1979. And it's continued to expand. Since its founding, the list of members has grown from the original 12 to 30 countries. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 and the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 saw the organization reevaluate its mission. Many former Soviet bloc countries have since become NATO members. But the end of the Cold War did not mean the end of hostilities. In 1995, NATO embarked on its first major crisis management operation in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Other missions would follow. At the turn of the century, the alliance faced one of its biggest tests ever, an attack against one of its members. Article 5 of the NATO Charter says an armed attack against one member is an attack against them all. The first and only time this article has ever been invoked was the day after the September 11th attacks on the United States in 2001. NATO members joined together and went to war with the U.S. in Afghanistan to fight against al-Qaeda and the Taliban. But more recently, NATO faced an existential crisis when U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to pull out of the alliance during his term in office. With Joe Biden now in the White House, Washington's outlook has changed dramatically.
He has NATO in his DNA. He's called NATO a sacred duty for the United States, and he's pledged that America will stay steadfast, committed to NATO's collective defence, but also that the United States will use NATO more than it did during the Trump years to consult on sort of global challenges. So all of this is really going to be music to the ears for the European NATO allies after the traumas of the Trump years.
NATO will once again be looking for reassurance that it can count on the support of its most powerful member, the United States.